Okay, welcome everybody this morning to Friday. Is it really April 3rd? House Agriculture and Forestry is meeting via Zoom, and we appreciate everybody's patience with us as we get used to the technology. We're all practicing so that we're good when it's time to go on the floor. And we're going to start off today with some information about the farmers markets. I have to say that this morning on CBS News, I heard some really dire stories about farmers in Georgia whose crops are ready to pick in the next week, and they don't have help to pick it. And it's things like cucumbers and squash and blueberries. And so I think now more than ever, Vermonters are going to really appreciate Vermont farmers. And Anson, I see that you're here. I would ask everybody to please mute your sound unless I'm calling on you or you want to speak. Remember how to raise your hands. And Anson, and Linda, you have me as a co-host, right? Not hearing from Linda, that's okay. Anson, welcome and thank you for spending some time with us. We also have John Primer to talk about this from the Bennington Farmers Market. So Anson, if you want to say a few words about what's going to be happening, we'd really appreciate that.
Sure. Well, good morning, everyone, and thanks for the opportunity to talk with you under a difficult situation for many of us. We're all focused on making sure that everyone stays healthy, stay home, stay in a safe place. And we're focused on making sure to control the spread of this pandemic. And people are doing the best they can under these extreme circumstances. And I think Vermont should be proud of what's happened to date as people are rallying and trying to do the best they can. It's something that we've never experienced before in our lives. Just a brief thing on farmers markets. We are engaged with a number of the farmers markets, particularly we have about 9 across the state that are involved in the winter farmers markets. So those seems to be the ones that we're working through now. And we're also looking ahead to May. And in May, we expect about 20 of them in mid-May to want to open as well. We've had some very productive conversations with market managers over the last few days. And right now, we are encouraging them to reach out to us, submit plans to us that might help make an opportunity for them to open and continue to sell their produce. We've been talking with Rutland. We know Bennington has been really creative about what they're doing. And right now, their farmers markets are not considered under the executive order to open, but the agency, working with the Agency of Commerce, is engaged with markets, hoping we can figure out a way to make this work. The key part here is we want to make sure to limit the consumer to the farmer buyer any chance we can. Many of these markets in the winter, of course, were inside, so that presented some issues as well because of that. So we're engaged with them. We hope we can come up with some plans, and we just want everyone to make sure to, if you've got an alternative, if you can get creative, if you can limit contact between, the vendor and the consumer, that is the best approach now. And some markets are doing that. They're engaged with us, and we hope over time things will open up a little bit more.
Thanks, Anson. So right now, can you be more specific about what's happening with the winter markets? Are those not able to function at this point?
Yes, right now they are not under the executive order to open. We have other areas that are CSAs are okay to open. We have food hubs, we have farm stands, and we're encouraging anything that could possibly be done with pre-ordering or online sales and delivery. And anything that can get to the curb outside a building. In a farmer's market, traditionally there's a culture of a gathering, and we need to be very careful about. We don't want to have a lot of people showing up in a confined space at one time. And it's we don't want a situation where, say, a a person shows up at the farmer's market and goes vendor to vendor to vendor to vendor to vendor, and that would create a lot of exposure. So if we can set up a situation where possibly there could be a checklist, there could be a pre-order buy, you could have, certain people show up at a certain time. But what we want to be careful about is not having, a couple of hundred people show up in an enclosed space and going from vendor to vendor to vendor where exposure could possibly be an issue. So I think that we're really encouraged by some of the proposals that we're hearing from farmers markets about getting creative on this. We want them to happen. We value how committed they are to their community, providing fresh food to everyone. We're going to have to limit things like, music's not going to be able to occur, and we really need to be focused on food and not pre-food and sandwiches made and that kind of thing. But if we can focus on products like greens and root vegetables and dairy and stuff like that, I think we probably can get to a better place. And those markets that are looking into mid-May, I would be really focused on how we're going to get there, how we can work on some of these. Those most likely would probably be outside, so that's a plus. We're not in an enclosed building. And those opening up in June, we've got another 40 of them that are going to be opening up in June. So I think it's really encouraging what we're hearing, but people really need to get creative in any way we can mitigate having a vendor have contact with a consumer. That's what we want to do.
So Anson, I did receive an email from the Bennington Farmers Market, and maybe at this point, are you available to listen to what John?
Sure.
Okay,
Absolutely.
John, do you want to unmute yourself, John, and talk to us a little bit about what the plans are that you have in place? I know that you were hoping to actually have a farmers market tomorrow, but can you tell us about some of the measures that you all have taken to make sure everyone's safe? John, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're back.
Great.
So we had a market on.
And John, could you just introduce yourself before you start?
Oh, certainly, yeah.
Thanks.
So I'm John Primer. I farm in Pownell, Vermont, very southwest corner of the state, with my wife Joy. We've been here. Well, we've been farming. Let's see. We moved here in '84 and started selling vegetables in '88, and were certified organic in '89. And we've been farming full-time for the last 15 years.
Great, thanks.
And I'm one of the founders, and now I'm the president of the board of the Bennington Farmers Market. So on March 21st, well, I'll back up. Our last indoor market was 2 weeks before, so March 7th, we had an indoor market, and that following week, we realized we couldn't do this anymore. A lot of our customers are older, and many of them have health conditions. Like the rest of the state, Bennington County is we're rather gray, myself included. So we decided to go outside on the 21st. We set up a pre-order only system, which was a little challenging. A lot of our customers don't have internet access, so there's a lot of phone calls. A lot of them don't use Facebook, so we were reaching out in many ways. So we got the pre-orders in. There was 8 vendors that were able to participate. the smaller vendors, we had their product brought to a I guess a location where they could be packaged in boxes for individual customers. One of the farmers took care of that, and then on the we limited the amount of traffic by dividing the times into 4. So, but based on alphabetical order of your name, so I think it was A through F came at the first time slot, G through L the next time slot. Nobody was to get out of their cars. We had there's a big parking lot where we have our summer market, and that was empty, so we were able to have the cars spaced out in there. And so they came in one entrance. They were directed where to go. We had a greeter who just said hello and said we'll be with you shortly. And then we had basically three tables set up, stands, so to speak. One was for the pre-orders that were the small pre-orders, and then there's 2 vegetable farms that had a lot of product. Everything was alphabetized. All the staff, well, we don't have any staff. All the volunteers and the vendors were gloved, and it went amazingly smoothly. They picked up, payment was either online for those who could, or we asked that people give exact change or a check in an envelope. And then either leave it in their trunk or in the back seat, and for those who could open their trunk, and we just put them in, and that way took the money and put it in most of us had a basket or box. We did have one fellow who walked, and he's kind of an environmentalist. He had to wait his turn in line like everybody else with the cars, and he was quite good about it. And it was a cold day, but he was fine with that. And we actually put his produce on the ground, or product on the ground, and he came and picked it up from the ground. Everything was boxed or bagged. So that was once, could have been a snafu, but it worked out okay. We had one EBT resident who used EBT, and the card machine was handed to their car. They swiped their card, and then the staff member took it out and wiped it down. And so that was one possible area that we would like to work on. I can't tell you how grateful our customers were. A lot of them, like I said, are older folks, and they're feeling really isolated. Obviously, a lot of them are afraid to go into the grocery stores because the protocol in there is not even anything close to what we're doing. And people were, I just can't get over how grateful people were. That's looking at my notes, that's basically it. Yeah. I can answer any questions anybody has.
Is Carolyn there?
I think you lost Carolyn. I think she dropped off.
Uh-oh.
Okay. I'll just say something real quick, John. I just appreciate the adaptability that you're doing and meeting needs. And like you said, these older folks appreciate almost the feeling of safety and comfort of being able to have access to the products and food you're providing. So thank you for doing that. I know, and getting some of these farmers online to be able to be more adaptable and accessible. So it's a big job, but thank you. It's encouraging to hear what you said.
You're welcome.
And John, this is Anson from the Agency of Ag. Thank you for standing this up so quickly. I know you did a remarkable job standing it up so quickly, and it could be a model for other farmers markets around the state. And a true leadership and your commitment to your community is outstanding, and you are providing a valuable service, and we recognize that. And thank you for you're just incredible to stand it up that quickly and do that. And hopefully others can come on board and learn some things that you've learned, that you've done. We know every state, every part of the state's a little bit different, every market's a little bit different, and every space is a little bit different, but well done. And we hope to allow more of them to open up, as long as we can mitigate some of these issues that we want to, protect the health of everybody. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
John, this is Tom Bach, and I'm curious, how many folks do you think you served?
Oh, on March 21st, we estimate 145 to 150.
Oh, pretty good. Good.
So I'm going to jump in here because I think Carolyn's dropped off, but I don't know if she's back yet or not. I'm not a host or co-host, so I don't have that same information she does. But is there any other questions for John Permer?
Carolyn is trying to get back on. She dropped off, but is trying to get back on.
Okay, so I'll just ask Anson if this is the type of thing that if farmer markets did similar things that they would be allowed to open up.
Yeah, and I think we're engaged with the Commerce Agency. I've been talking with Ted Brady and Abby Willard on our side. And yes, I think this is one of those examples that, just think of it as, we're trying to limit, personal contact between the vendor and also the customer. And I think if people keep submitting their plans and keep working through this and be creative and think about, outside, curbside, pre-order, and we understand it's a heavy lift and for some, but I think, we want to make this work for the community of all the farmers markets and the vendors, because they are providing a valuable service. And as John mentioned, some feel more comfortable in this setting than they do going into a retail shopping experience. So I would encourage any and all farmers markets keep engaging with us, and we'll keep talking with Commerce. And I think there's an opportunity for folks to comply with the executive order if we're just careful about it and move forward.
Great, Anson. Sorry, everybody. My internet went out. This is all part of the learning process, I guess. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, good.
Are you on the phone or are you on the phone or?
I'm on my
Okay.
computer. I'm back on my computer now.
Okay, because we can't see you at the moment.
Oh, you can't? I can see me and I can see you.
I can see her.
Okay, I didn't know if it were a phone or.
If you swipe your screen, Ronnie, you can see more people. Have you done that? Swipe it sideways. Did it work?
Oh yeah, there you are.
There she
Okay,
is.
All right.
good. Yeah, sorry. I live in the middle of nowhere, so that's one of the problems. So John, I sort of caught the, Anson, I caught the end of what you were saying, and I'm hoping, what's that weird noise? I'm hoping that we're going to be able to work this out fairly quickly. Is that what I'm hoping? Did you say?
Yeah, it's Anson again. Yes, we're engaged. We've had some productive conversations over the last couple of days with individual markets, and there's 9 winter markets that we're engaged with now, trying to figure out a way to do this. We think this can work out if we get a plan together, and Bennington, has a plan. It seems to be working. They're complying with the order and trying to keep everyone fed and keep everybody healthy, and we're open to any proposal, and farmers and the market managers should keep sending those proposals to us, and we hope to keep it moving. And especially of those that are thinking about mid-May, I think I would encourage the mid-May folks, when they want to open up, start thinking about how they want to manage their markets, because we don't know how long this is going to go on. It's April, we up to April 3rd, I think now.
Yeah.
So they've got some time to think about this. They don't have a lot of time, but we want to get as many of these open as we can and just keep everybody safe.
Great. Anson, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And best, everyone stay healthy, and it's nice to see you all again, at least virtually a little bit. And someday we'll be back in that little committee room chatting in person.
Right. Can you
Yeah.
hold 1 second? I see John Primer sort of has his hand up. John, did you want to ask a question?
We do have a market scheduled for tomorrow. And I just wanted to know if, well, can we go ahead?
My understanding, if it sounds like you're complying with all the order from what you described to me, and it seems like you're doing basically a curbside market, and there's very little.
Hey, Anson, we just lost you, or did we lose me?
Contacting with the order.
Okay, so it's
Yeah.
like what you're saying, Anson, we didn't hear quite all of it, but it sounds like since they seem to be complying with all of the guidelines, that they would
Yes.
they would be able to go forward tomorrow with their market, as long as it's curbside.
From what John has described to us, it sounds like they've done everything they can to comply with the order.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So John, that's good news. I think what I want to do now, unless anybody has a question, I don't see any hands. Oh, Rodney, you have a hand up.
Yeah, can I ask bring up something to Anson that's unrelated?
Sure.
Yeah, quickly, the other day, inspector and field rep showed up at my farm to do a federal rating. And I wrote a letter, I sent a message to Eli about it, and she replied back how the inspector and the field rep came with separate vehicles, and they put rubber gloves on and everything to protect themselves. But we were getting ready to milk, and they came in, they didn't have any mask on or anything. And what's the protocol to protect the farmer? I mean, we have a lot of stainless steel, and I feel that I understand that this virus can live on stainless steel for several days. And I just think that they should be wearing a mask if they're coming onto other people's buildings unannounced. And I just wanted to bring that up to you.
Okay, and thank you. And yeah, that's one of those that we're under requirements to do those inspections, and I think we're going to get some latitude on that going forward. And in April, I don't believe it's going to happen because we've asked for to take a break of that to give both protection to farmers and also some protection to our employees. And So, yeah, and I'm probably not qualified to talk about the mask part of it. I think there's been some debate whether masks should be used or not used. So I'm not probably the qualified person to say whether that's appropriate or not appropriate. But we do take this very seriously, and we try to make sure that all our people had the necessary equipment to make sure we didn't cause any harm to the farmer or to the farm.
All right, Ronnie, does that answer your question?
Not really, but no, I just,
Yeah,
if for some reason, and we have no idea as a farmer, I mean, if they had been exposed to the last farm they were at,
mhm.
and they coughed or sneezed or whatever, and it lands on our stainless steel bulk tank or other equipment, I
Yeah,
just think
that's it. And I
think that's a concern. I mean,
sure.
I
And I think,
I fully understand about the ratings and all that they have to do them. I
yeah,
was a little surprised that they didn't have a face mask or something on to
yeah,
protect the farm a little better if they're coming in unannounced. And we
Okay,
had
well, maybe
people in there too, so it wasn't just them in the barn. It was me
sure.
and my other worker. But I
Well,
just wanted
Totally.
to bring that up. I just wanted to
Thank
bring
you.
it up.
Thank you. And I appreciate that your concern on that. And I'll have more conversations with EB going forward. And I think we may have put some of that stuff on hold going forward for at least 60 days.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so Tom, I see your hand up, but did you push your little raise hand button?
I did. It's not, and it says raised hand, but
Oh, it's okay. It is now. Tom, did you have a question about this issue or
not
something
so
else?
much about this issue, but it's really probably to Anson or Carrie. I heard, I've got my notes here that there's a conference regarding farmers and the CARES Act on April 8th. Where is that and what's it about? Do you know anything about it?
The CARES Act?
Yeah,
And farmers?
there's a conference I heard from somebody in April 8th regarding farmers and the CARES Act.
I'm not familiar with that. I'm familiar with the CARES Act, and that's the
Yep.
the big package that came up from Washington to Vermont. And I would encourage anyone to go to our resource page. We have a resource page on COVID-19, and we're populating that with all the kind of resources, including potential programs for farmers. One that began today through the SBA is the protection program, and we think many in the ag community are eligible for that. So I would encourage anyone that wants a full rundown of all the resources that are available and all the frequently asked questions that go to our webpage and look for the resource page on COVID, and some of that information will be there. But there's going to be a lot of programs going to be rolled out over the next few days and weeks, and we hope to make sure that everyone's aware of them, so they can either check and see if they can participate in them.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Anson.
Thank you.
All right, I see Carrie's hand is up. Carrie, did you want to say something?
I did. I wanted an opportunity to bail my boss out here about the
Okay.
masks. No, on today's press conference, the governor and Commissioner Levine were recommending everybody that goes out in public wear a mask. And I don't know if Rodney, you were talking about our inspectors coming to your farm, or more specifically the milk hauler. And I'm sure more guidance will be coming out from the agency about critical workers and masks now with this new guidance.
Rodney, yeah.
Yeah, Carrie, it was one of your inspectors and a field rep from a co-op. And I'm just saying that, nothing happened. I mean, and they were fine. They were, kept themselves distance from each other. My concern is that, if they go on to somebody's, into somebody's barn and they, had been in contact with somebody that had it and they're not, they sneeze or cough or something and it lands on stainless steel, that my understanding that virus can live on stainless steel for several days. And then we come along and we touch that or whatever. I just, that's my only concern, but.
Yeah, I understand. And as we know more, additional precautions are being implemented.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to bring that up because, maybe they should be wearing a mask.
So Carrie, did you say that the recommendation now is to wear masks?
The 11 o'clock press conference with the governor and Commissioner Levine were recommending people going into the public space wear masks.
So you guys, I've sewn 60 masks.
I might need one or two.
Yeah, they've mostly gone to hospitals, but I'll keep sewing. All right, so now I would just go to Vicky. Everybody's there. By the way, for those of you who are on, we're not really using the chat function. But I did see something from Edward Sheehan and saying, can you type in the page or title of the page? I don't quite know what that means. But Edward, do you want to say?
Yes, please. I was referencing Anson Tebbett's mentioning go to the page or go to our site. So I don't know what the site is. I'm not part of the government.
Oh, okay. Anson, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, it's if you go to the Agency of Agriculture, if you just Google Vermont Agency of Agriculture, and there should be a COVID icon there, and you can just go to that. And it will populate all the resources and all the recommendations that we have to date.
Great. All right, so I still see I want to move on to Vicky's report from Chuck Ross regarding farmers markets, but I see Tom Bach and Rodney still have their hands up. Did you lower your hands or do you have something else?
I didn't know my hand was up.
Okay,
Okay, there it goes.
well, your hand was up to respond and then, okay, so Tom, did you put your hand down? You will. Okay, so Vicky, would you like to say maybe 5 minutes of what you heard from Chuck regarding farmers markets, and then we're going to move on to I think it's 336.
Yeah, thank you, Carolyn, for just a few minutes. And I ended up on this call because the secretary for Chuck Ross is a good friend, goes to our church, and we're working together on our local food shelf, getting some great food from Pete's Greens for our community. So all these questions are coming out for farmers markets. And like John Primer just mentioned, adapting and trying to find the best practices for hygiene. So UVM Extension is putting out a lot of materials online to be accessible for all these farmers markets about helping their produce to be clean, food washing, distribution, helping those who are selling to have the best hygiene, and what obviously all of you are hearing, adapting to in the moment. Also with agritourism, being that that's so important for people coming on farms, they're actually helping now teach them how, when farms can open, to be able to communicate with customers safe practices, and they're preparing their farms to be even safer areas for agritourism and moving to very much to online sales. Also in Franklin County, Sharon, you would be familiar probably with some of the stress going on there with a lot of the dairy farms. And the UVM Extension is trying to have consultations one-on-one with farmers every day, giving them advice and encouragement and support. So as we see some milk prices plummeting and probably a lot of fear and anxiety going on. UVM Extension is trying to get people connected to help them through this. Many farmers are, of course, struggling with being online, like John said in his testimony, and hotspots are developing. UVM Extension's working on getting some more accessibility of broadband to farms, and particularly even in town, like at libraries and things. Another thing that's come up that's been an interesting aspect of COVID is assistance for our migrant workers that are on farms, how to protect themselves on the farm. They're very isolated. Sometimes it's harder for them to get groceries. Some of the people who have volunteered to help migrant workers are older, in the older category, you know, who are retired. They'll do a lot of shopping and things for these migrant workers, and now they don't feel comfortable going out in public. So some of these migrant workers are being left without ability to get places or have someone drive with them or for them. And another issue for the migrant workers is their children, and getting them continued education on the farm. Sometimes the migrant workers themselves don't speak English, so they need people to help them understand how to help their own children with continuing education and communicating with schools. So these are a few of the areas that UVM is really UVM Extension really stepping up to. There was a lot more that Chuck shared with me, but he said he would be glad to come on and share with us maybe next week, depending on what we're dealing with. But ongoing communication with farmers through UVM Extension seems to be the main point, with blogs, Facebook discussions, answering the phones, online education materials, even 4-H programs, trying to keep them going while kids are home, and realizing that a lot of farmers are dealing with deep revenue loss, unstable markets, and their own family tensions and disruptions. So they're really being proactive. I just want to say thank you to everyone who's working behind the scenes and on their kitchen tables and kitchen counters and staying at work remotely and trying to be proactive in so many things.
Thanks, Vicki. Really appreciate that. And if you talk to Cindy, please thank her as well.
I will.
Great, thanks. All right, I think what I'd like to do, John Primer, yes?
I just wanted to mention that when we were developing our plan, I ran it by Chris Callahan with UVM Extension and Vern Grubinger, and get their opinions on it, and they helped us a lot.
Great, super. Thanks, John.
So can I
yes.
leave? Do you need me anymore?
I think we're all set. I think we're done talking about the farmers market issue, and it sounds to me like you can move forward with your market today, or tomorrow rather. Okay. And what I'd like to do now is move on to our hemp seed bill. So if you would like to leave the meeting, you're welcome to. You're welcome to stay on if you want, but feel free to leave.
I've got farming to do myself.
Yeah, right. Good
Thank
luck.
you all so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right. So next up is S336, or is it 366? I don't know. Let's see. 336. And Mike O'Grady, I have you on here. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to say. We had some discussion at our last meeting, which was Wednesday, about this hemp seed bill and the desire to guarantee certain characteristics and qualities of seed. And there was some discussion about whether we're doing the industry's work or not. And so I did hear you say, Mike, that that we do offer these guarantees or some kind of protection for other seed. Did you want to say a word about that?
I think you just said it. the standards that are in 336 for hemp seeds are similar, if not the same, than the standards and guarantees that are required for other seed, vegetable, flower, and other agricultural seeds. They have been the standards for a long time before I started here, which was 17 years ago. So you're just bringing hemp into that same umbrella. The reason why it's not drafted as part of the seed chapter is because hemp seed is defined as hemp, and you then need to have the same penalties for a violation of the sale of hemp seed that you do for hemp products. And that's why it's in a separate chapter, but it is the same essential authority that the Agency of Agriculture has under statute for other seeds.
Okay, thank you. So in order to potentially answer some of the questions as to why this is necessary, we've invited several hemp farmers. Carrie, did you want to say something before the hemp farmers started?
Sure. And thanks for joining us. There are hemp farmers, but I wanted to highlight Joe Veldon is from 7 Leaf Genetics, and he's also a seed producer. So we have hemp farmers that were affected by erroneous guarantees on hemp seeds last year, as well as somebody who's trying to build a business in Vermont producing hemp seeds.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, that said, haven't gone over the bill with anybody other than the folks in your committee, and the differences that are in the hemp seed bill as compared to the straight seed law are 2 distinct differences. One, the hemp seed bill charges the agency with developing a program to certify hemp seed, and that's a process that we would work through with the university. That's a multi-year process, even if the bill is enacted now. And the other piece is hemp seed are unique in that folks are offering feminized hemp seeds. And if the seeds don't meet that feminization guarantee, the farmers are out a significant portion of their investment. So those are the 2 distinct differences in the hemp seed bill compared to the straight up seed chapter.
Mike,
And yep.
Grady, did you want to say something?
No, I think I was just shaking my head because Carrie's right. The certification program is kind of the big difference, in my opinion. Feminization needs to be there because hemp is the only seed that really where feminization matters.
Okay, great, thanks. All right, Carrie.
The seed certification program is also mirrors the consumer protection part of. We have a potato seed certification program, and we still do that. Vermont used to be a larger producer of potatoes, and now we only do that potato certification for 1 farmer in Vermont, but it's not new or unheard of. And I know that Tom had some concerns that we were doing something that nobody else was doing. So I just wanted to say we mirror these. This is not a new concept. These consumer protection programs are mirrored in other parts of the industry.
Okay, great.
And I'll let you hear from the experts.
Someone's
and Mike-
moving stuff around and it's making noise. Can they mute?
Yeah, I think it might have been Mike O'Grady, but Linda, could you make me a co-host? I don't know that I am at this point.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. John O'Brien, I see your hand is up.
There we go. just a quick question. So going forward, Carrie, would this just raise the bar for all hemp seeds being sold so that they would all be feminized and guaranteed with that? So, you know, if it was a $1 to $5 for a feminized hemp seed, nobody can come in and say, well, here's 50 cents and you just get what you pay for. It may have thistles, it may have male hemp seeds, etc. That won't happen.
Well, it could, but the consumer would know because that guarantee would be on the label. You would still be able to purchase basically a handful of seed without any of those guarantees. It wouldn't prohibit that, but you would know what you were buying.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Okay, I think I'd like to go to our first witness. And I have Joe Veldon. Would you like to unmute yourself? All right, Joe, welcome. And if you can just introduce yourself for folks who might be looking in on YouTube, who might not know you, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Joe Veldon. Excuse me. I've been a longtime cannabis grower. We operate a recreational cannabis farm out in Oregon as well. And that's kind of where my breeding kind of got into, that's kind of where I got into breeding. I was hired to essentially establish a breeding program for a bunch of medical growers out there. And excuse me, over the course of the years, Oregon shifted their medical program into a recreational program. And that kind of disbanded this whole medical group that I was working with. So we still grow high-grade cannabis of medically significant cannabis. We've been growing CBD and CBG, high CBD and CBD strains for 6 or 7 years now. And I've been breeding them and trying to make new varieties that are stronger and better. In 2016, we brought a lot of the staple crops that a lot of the hemp cannabis is based on, the Harlequin and the Canatonic. The Hippie's Disappointment is actually is a great strain that a lot of other strains are based on. I had my hands on them about 4 or 5 years ago and have been lucky enough to have been playing with them for that long because it takes that long to develop a stabilized seed. It takes that long to guarantee or to have the probability that the seed that you're going to sell someone is going to be not identical, but very similar to the one next to it, to the one next to it, to the one next to it. Excuse me, it's not a short endeavor. We started 7 Leaf Genetics here in Vermont. In 2016, we did our first back crosses and our first hybridizing of the plant. In 2017 and 18, we increased, we worked with about 4 or 5 farmers. I live in Morrisville, so we had worked with some farmers in Stowe and Hardwick, just doing some beta testing and kind of growing our genetics out to see if they performed in Vermont and they were going to do essentially what we said they were going to do. After 2 successful years of doing that, we started selling seeds commercially last year. And we were, like most other seed sellers, we sold out, I think before April. It was crazy last year. And what it did was it opened up a lot of farmers to inferior genetics. And you know, these seeds are they're $1 a piece. They're expensive. I mean, this is $125,000 worth of seeds. So it's a lot, and that's why what I've seen this year is there's an enormous amount of hemp farmers that are getting into the seed game because it is profitable. They don't really understand how to properly stabilize a genetic. So you're going to run into this problem writ large, I think, in the next year or two if we don't do something. There are a lot of people out there that, not any malice, you know, they're not trying to hurt people, but there's, you know, I talked to a couple of breeders that were really excited about their strain and they just made some seeds out in the open air and excuse me, their seeds are going to be all over the place. They're not going to get a consistent plant one right after the other. And as a farmer, that is what you're looking for. You want to be able to plant your plant, know that you're getting a certain cannabinoid range. The plant's going to produce a certain amount. It's going to finish on time. It's going to be generally mold resistant. these are a lot of the things that as a breeder that you're looking for with that. Excuse me. So to my mind, the more things that we can put in place, I don't know that we need to be redundant, but the more things we can put in place to guarantee that these people that are selling seed are going through the proper protocols and are going through the proper testing. All our seed goes through a third-party independent feminization and germination test. And we use that not necessarily as a selling point, but just as a way to kind of, not guarantee, but to show that, hey, we are working to, this is what the lab said. It's not our lab. It's not us in our basement, cooking these up and trying to grow a bunch of plants. This is, we sent it out to a company that we paid for to do that. The more that you can include that, if you can have a state certification, like I said, I don't know that that would be redundant within the, there's like I think it's the International Seed Certification Association. There's a couple of certification associations with seed that are for vegetable seeds and grain seeds and all that have opened up to hemp. It's a 18-month process to get your genetics into their system. It's something that we're just starting to look into now. But all of these things that if the state can say, hey, if you're a farmer in Vermont, and you're buying hemp seed, you want to make sure that you're buying it from whatever state you are, has some sort of certification in it, because you are going to run into people buying, saying one thing and it not working out. They're going to, I can't tell you the horror stories I saw last year of people planting, what they thought was $50,000 worth of feminized seed and getting $25,000 worth of male plants. It was a train wreck. So to my mind, the more you can do to help certify that feminized seed, and that's really the only portion that you need to really pay attention to. The regular seed, there's open pollination. If that's a regular seed, you're not generally looking for only a sensimilia crop or an only female crop. You can have males in there and you'll call them out. Some farmers do that. They'll just plant regular seed. These seeds are $1 a piece. A regular seed's 20 cents a piece. So you can plant twice as many, cull all the males, and you're good to go. A lot of farmers don't know how to do that. If you miss it, you're gonna, it brings on all these other problems. But if that should still be an opportunity to people if that's what they want to do. The feminized seed, I think, is what's really important to make sure that gets some sort of guarantee. It's hard, as someone who makes these seeds. I'm not sleeping at night. I'm worried about, this crop here is out at testing right now. I'm praying that they come back and the germ test pass and the feminization rate test. Now, I have established protocols. I have a state-of-the-art lab that we built in Hyde Park. I've got everything to do to make it, but until I actually have a test that says that these seeds are okay to go, it's just a jar full of seeds. So hopefully by Monday or Tuesday, I'll know that the tests come back good, and then I'll feel comfortable selling them to the public and know that my word when I say that you're going to buy $10,000 worth of seeds from me, and I'm going to give you seeds that they're going to produce about 10,000 of the same exact plant, or generally speaking.
Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
I'm wondering if we should hear from everybody. Oh, I see Terry's hand is up. Terry?
Could he give us maybe like a 2-minute explanation on what the process is to feminize a seed? How can you just tell what's a male seed and what's a female seed, or do you have to do something to it?
A couple things. There are machines that are being tested right now that will run through, and you can tell a male seed from a female seed. You can do it with your eye. The problem is it takes a big, huge magnifying glass. If you're doing 10,000 seeds, it's going to take you a couple months to do. It's a hard process. So, excuse me. The first part of your question, I think I'm sorry, I forgot what the first part was about, feminization. And so the process essentially, there's two processes, main processes that you use, that a breeder uses to feminize a crop. They both involve essentially applying a nutrient or a chemical. In this case, I use colloidal silver. There is thiosulfate that you can use as well. I use the silver just because it's safer. It's a dietary supplement. So, but you can use these sprays on the plant, and when the plant is initiating flower, like when it's starting to produce its buds, that's when you apply this chemical. And what it does is it inhibits the plant from creating I keep thinking salicylic acid, and it's not. It prevents it from producing a couple proteins, and those proteins are what actually allow the plant to produce a female set of sex organs, right? It produces that little flower with the two little hairs that stick out of it. That's the female sex organ. When you inhibit that, you don't inhibit the pollen or the genetic information that the plant is producing. You're just saying to the plant, or you're inhibiting the plant from producing it in its normal fashion as a female. So what it's left with is producing it as a male portion. So what you get are essentially a male flower, which is, an open flower with some anthers dangling from these thin filaments, and the pollen hangs on that. That pollen, because there's no male genetics or no male genes introduced, that pollen is female. So you can take that all female pollen and cross it with an all female plant, and that will produce an all female seed. Does that make sense? Because you're eliminating all the male genetics in the game. You're not allowing any of it. You're taking a female plant, and before it's able to produce its female sex parts, you're spraying this application to it. It produces male sex parts that are still producing female genes. Does that make sense?
Complicated. Thank you.
It's not a simple process, and the process itself is just spraying a plant at the right time for enough of it. But the actual getting the pollination right and making sure that your plants are in the proper stage, there's a lot more to it than just doing that. And you can watch feminization videos on YouTube all the time, and they'll tell there's some guy in his backyard spraying the plant. It may or may not work. You may or may not get good genetics. The point is, I have established protocols that I've been using for 4 years now, and I still worry that I'm not going to get it right, because in the end, you're still working with a living being, and you're causing that living being to do something that it's not supposed to do. And then you're taking the product of that and you're applying it to a plant that's doing what it is supposed to do, in hopes that you can produce a viable seed.
Thanks, Joe. Any more questions? Yeah. Oh, Edward, do you go by Ted?
I do, but Edward's fine.
Okay.
Joe, my name's Edward Sheehan, or Ted Sheehan. My question for you would be on the seed propagation, on the feminized seeds. Are you doing this indoors or outdoors? Is this
it's all indoors. One of the biggest, like I said, I work a lot out in Oregon as well. And one of the biggest problems that we're seeing out there is there's a lot of operations like that. They're doing it in greenhouses that aren't sealed up, and they're doing it outdoors. What you're getting is unintended cross-pollination.
Well, you just mentioned it, because you just said in your explanation on the feminized seeds, the guy, the backyard grower who's blowing silver spray and contaminating plants 5 miles around. So I was just.
Yeah, we built a state-of-the-art facility in North Hyde Park. We have a 1,200 square foot sealed, environmentally controlled room. Like our air conditioners have HEPA filters on them.
Cool.
Nothing goes in. The particles are 4 microns. Pollen particles, a pollen molecule, particle is 4 microns big. So they get through most screens, most about anything. So you got to take real care to make sure that you don't get that pollen where you don't want it.
Sure. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Joe.
Yep.
So Edward or Ted, if you'd like to testify at this point, we'd love to hear what you have to say regarding 336, and but please start by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about you.
Sure. So I just got notification of this meeting yesterday late afternoon, so I haven't had a tremendous amount of time to prepare for it.
That's
I live up. So my name is Edward Sheehan, or Ted Sheehan. My partner and I, Rich Cussell, own Green Mountain Organic Hemp, and we're a certified organic farm down in Rutland, Vermont, 1911 North Grove Street. And this was our initial year, or this past year was our initial year growing CBD for oil. So we focused specifically on CBD oil. We spent last winter vetting some suppliers out of Oregon, and had decided on using Jupiter Seeds Midwest strain for our primary plant. So we purchased seeds last winter. We germinated them in late April into May. And in mid-May, we decided that we're going to expand our farm a little bit more. So our grower, our contract grower at the time, told us that he had a line on a guy that had great seeds. Now, we had spent most of the winter vetting Jupiter seeds with phone calls throughout the country to farms. I actually knew a couple people locally within Vermont that had grown the plant and the plant had done very well. So long story short is our grower managed to purchase 15,000 seeds at a significantly reduced rate from a gentleman down in Dummerston, Vermont. And he was, at the time, the company was called Hilltop Hemp Nurseries. And the seeds that our contract grower bought were supposed to be an Auto 2 variety and an H4 variety, which are typically plants that are grown more for flower. What happened was we received the seeds. They came without a COA or an analysis. They came out they didn't come with any type of certification. They came via a PayPal invoice, and we were hesitant from the minute we got them to use them. And the seller and the grower, I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but we couldn't return the seeds. So we germinated the seeds, and the germination rate was fairly weak compared to what Jupiter Seeds had done. And we planted the plants. And within, we had all plants in the ground. I think it was mid-June, mid to late June. And by late July, early August, our north field started getting overrun by males. And we spent the better part of August fending off our south field from our north field. And we were fortunate enough in that we had the farm is there was an old cow path that split the two main fields, which are both about 30 acres large. And they were still tree lined. So our north side field started getting overrun with male plants. Our south field, which was all Jupiter. So our south field was all Jupiter seeds, and our north field were the seeds from Hilltop Hemp. And within 2 or 3 weeks, we started recognizing that we had, I mean, I'm not even sure if we even had any feminized seeds from the second purchase from Hilltop Hemp. So what happened was we had to make some decisions quickly. And our decisions at first were to, as Joe said, walk the fields on a regular basis. We were walking fields every day for 8 hours to 12 hours a day and pulling plants. And the problem with this is obviously it's time consuming, it's labor consuming, it's expensive, and it just takes a tremendous amount of time. And it's also, if the plant is starting to show pollen, the minute you touch it, it's airborne. Okay. So it's a question of putting bags over plants. We considered plowing the plants underneath into the soil. But at the time, we were hoping to be able to salvage something out of the fields as well. The problem for us, besides buying extraordinarily poor seeds, was I had signed multiple contracts. So unlike a lot of farms in the state that are currently struggling with places to place their either biomass or get their product processed, I had signed contracts in May with 2 different companies or processors, and I can get back to that in a little bit. So in effect, 15,000 seeds in this case scenario to me represented close to $1 million worth of product of revenue. Okay, it didn't cost us $1 million to produce it, but each seed at this case, these seeds were they were essentially 75 cents, I think on the dollar. But the point being is a plant represents, if it's a $40, at the time the plants were trading at $40 a pound. If a plant can put off 1.5 pounds, it's $60. It's a $60 plant versus a $1 seed, or 75-cent seed. So what comes around is the seed cost is really just Joe's $125,000 worth of seeds. If they do what they're supposed to do, are worth every dime at $1 a piece. The seeds that we purchased from Jupiter Seeds, which we got at 85 cents, produced exactly what they were supposed to do. They averaged around 2.5 pounds of biomass, and thank God, because we were able to fill our primary contract with our primary processor. but the secondary field or secondary grow on the north side was an absolute disaster, and it left us anywhere at a bare minimum $1 million of revenue lost. And the cross pollination that Joe had mentioned that can occur with a seed that's, we found that the plants did pollinate some of our plants in the south field, but it was few and far between. We just happened to know as we began the harvest in October, as we were checking buds and looking for any type of seed plants, we noticed a few, some females had been pollinated, but it had been, I think, too far down the road. There's like a wives' tale about males will show themselves for about a week or a week and a half. That's absolutely bunk. We saw male plants in our fields from the beginning of August through almost the end of September. All right, it is an ongoing battle. It is not something that, like, okay, they just show their flower for a little bit. And I'll come to you one second, Joe. And I don't know about this, but I can just tell you from our experience, the battle became basically a 7-week battle before we started taking down plants. Now, the gentleman that sold us the plants, or sold us the seeds on the north side from Hilltop Hemp, he did come to our farm in mid-August. I got him up there, I called him. He resisted for a little while. He showed up on the farm. He came, he walked on into our north field, said point blank, you've got non-feminized seeds. This wasn't supposed to happen. I've got insurance. I've got this and that. How many plants do you think you've pulled so far? At the time, we pulled 6,000 plants out of the field. All right, so I said, I have a minimum of probably 10,000 plants that I'm going to be looking for some type of security on from an insurance standpoint. He said, that's fine. I'll take the samples. He took the samples. He took about 15 plants, put them in the back of his truck, drove off. I called him a week later, within 2 days. He sent the genetics back to Oregon. His connection was, his family apparently had some type of connection to either Oregon State or Oregon University. They rented land to the university, so they had the genetics and had been farmed on their lands. And that was the story that our grower was told, who then in turn told the principals, myself and Rich. So what happened was the genetics got sent out to Oregon, and then we never heard from the gentleman again. And we've tried to this point to find some type of resolution without having to go to court, but that hasn't. It's just such a headache. It's I don't know what we can actually recover at this point. I did happen to notice that Hilltop Hemp Nurseries is no longer, it disbanded or it resigned as a business as of 4/1/2020. So it literally 2 days ago, they're no longer in business. But the problem was significant for us in that it absolutely threw our business plan completely up in the air. And shame on us, I guess, for I guess we made some mistakes trusting some people within our own organization. But the fact that this gentleman had only been in business for less than 3 months at the time and sold us 15,000 seeds with no background, was a convicted felon in the state of Oregon, had a company that just started up in southern Vermont, was able to sell and we weren't the only farm that he sold seeds to, is just not right. I think at the end of the day, these, as you know, as Joe mentioned, if you look up Jupiter Seeds, they are certified. They are certified by the state of Oregon. They are certified by AOSA analysis. They do their homework and they do their genetics, or they take their genetics seriously. And the plants did, you know, we were extraordinarily happy. I did share some pictures with Linda last night. I don't know if any of you got them, but you can see the disparity between the two fields. The one that's obviously got the deep, dark green, lush fields. Yeah, that is our Midwest strain. That's Jupiter Seeds. And that is our south field. You're looking basically across to Pico and Killington from that view. That's a high point on our field. And those plants did fantastic. They were averaged anywhere from, I would say in girth, anywhere from 5 to 7 feet wide, and got to heights of, I'm 6'3". I had plants that were above my head. So it was almost like a Christmas tree farm. The reverse, I don't know if you can put up the picture of the scantily filled field. All right, that's a male plant. If you want to go back to show, yep, this is one of the males. That
Linda's trying. We're
fine.
all getting used to this technology.
Okay, so this is our north side field. Okay, so this is basically in and around October, the beginning of October. So the plants that we have left in the field that you see here were plants that actually were pollinated by the males. Okay, so we kept them. Some of them at the time were fairly large plants, and they hadn't started producing the seeds. But all those plants right there have all been were all seed plants. They turned completely into seeds. So the question became, what do we do now? And how do we handle this? If we take them, the seeds are going to drop to the ground. We'll have to plow them under. Are they going to propagate as males next year within this field? So it's a pretty tricky situation. But as you can see, the distances between the plants is really reflective of the fact that the plants that were supposed to be there have all been pulled out. Now this had full irrigation and had been, but we had to throw in the towel and focus on the other side, which you folks just saw, which illustrate what we were trying to guard from these particular plants. But even the plants in the distance.
Yeah, Linda, can you go to that photograph of the male plant? There.
So this is Joe, you're a seed guy, but this is a pretty good example of a male plant. I would think
Yep.
at early stages, correct?
Yeah, I say early July, mid-July.
Yeah, it was a little bit late. It was actually a little bit later than that, but yeah. So this is what popped up.
Yeah, no, that's the classic. I mean, yeah, it's a male plant.
So the one of the issues we had, well, let me not issues. This was our biggest issue. That north field was absolutely overrun with male plants. Now no one's going to guarantee 100% feminized seeds. Okay, so of the Jupiter seeds that we bought, we purchased 10,000 seeds outright, which I believe they shipped us 10,800 due to their they have a germination factor that they use. So they give you a little bit more in case germination is an issue. Of the plants that we planted, we harvested close to 10,000 of the Jupiter seeds. And of those, we pulled out 11 males. So we did have we had 11 males out of 10,000 plants or 10,000 seeds versus 10,000 males out of 15,000 seeds. And then of what we had left over was ruined due to the pollination. So it's a pretty tough pill to bite or a pill to swallow, and certainly disrupted our business plan significantly. And that's my song and dance.
So I'm becoming aware of the time, and I want to make sure that we get Daniel McClure in here as well. I want to thank you for your testimony and sorry for your problem. And then Daniel, when we hear from you, then I'll have my committee ask questions. So Daniel, do you want to unmute yourself? Edward, do you want to mute yourself?
Absolutely.
Thanks. And Daniel, when you begin to speak, could you just introduce yourself? Thanks. I'm not seeing that you're still muted. Hold on, let me unmute you. There we go. Daniel.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't have the problem that Ted had as far as feminized. I had problems with the THC.
And could you just say your name and where your farm is?
Yeah, I'm Dan McClure. I have a farm in Barton, Vermont. And I also own a real estate company and got into growing hemp on my farm because of a friend of mine who grew it and told me how well he did. So I decided to do it. I had allowed him to dry his plants the prior year in my facility in my barn. And so we decided to grow 8,000 plants, and some of the plants were seeds from Oregon that did very well, did like as they advertised. We planted a couple thousand plants from a company that was Northern Roots, was the name of the company. And they advertised these as powdery mildew resistant and excellent plants for oil. So the plants did great. They were growing really nice. We had a lot of 8-foot plants, huge plants. We irrigated, we used plastic, fish motion for fertilizer, tried to do everything right. We went around and did our tests to check for the THC and the CBD content, and found out that these plants were anywhere from 3 to 8% in THC, which meant they could not be processed because they were too high in THC. So we kind of left those plants alone, trying to figure out what to do. We called Northern Roots. They said they would buy them back. They would buy the crop. 2 or 3 days later, no word. Then they said we could have the crop processed, and that's when I decided that I wasn't going to be playing games with plants that were high in THC. As I mentioned, I sell real estate, and I've sold farms for the U.S. Marshal that were marijuana at one time, and I said I wasn't going to deal with being in trouble. So I called the ag department, told them what was going on, told them how I was going to destroy the plants. I couldn't just rototill them into the ground because we used plastic. So we had to harvest every plant and drive over them with a tractor and put topsoil over them and destroy them that way. I had bought plants, so the seeds, I didn't buy the seeds from Northern Roots. I bought the plants from the same friend that I let him use the barn prior year to dry his crop in. So I didn't feel I had much to stand on going after this guy that grew the plants, but so we just destroyed them, and it was a hard pill to swallow, because these plants were beautiful plants, and so we lost a quarter of our crop because of that. Then we lost another quarter of our crop because we got mold in the barns that we were trying to dry the plants in. So we ended up with half a crop, and I'm still sitting on half a crop of biomass as we speak.
Thanks, Dan. Carrie, did we not have the legislation in place that would have allowed Dan to take his crop to a dispensary and have the THC removed?
It was a little hotter than that.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right.
And these are the H2s, what they were about 5%, I believe.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So up to what level can you remove THC, Carrie?
So that was set in statute at 1%.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm wondering, if the statutory language that we're proposing here had been in place, that would have taken care, Carrie, of these two issues, which number one is THC level, and the other one is the feminization.
Yeah, it would require those guarantees be on the label of the seed. And it's basically mimics the consumer protection program that's in place already for seed, with the addition of the feminization guarantee. And the certified seed program is a larger chunk. That is something that we would eventually do for companies like Joe in particular. And it's a state certification that does use the other entities that were mentioned to guarantee that variety is true.
Okay. Now, Tom Bach, it was you who had a lot of the questions about this and the need for it. I'm wondering if you have any questions that you would like to ask any of these folks.
I do. I'd like to, and I'm kind of convinced I'm moving toward the Carrie's thinking. I have one question though for Carrie. Do you think the the need to certify seed as we go forward will be necessary for recreational cannabis seed?
I'm not clear on your question. What was
Yeah,
that again?
no, I understand, but I'm gonna, if it's okay, Tom, Joe is way more of an expert about high THC cannabis than I am. So if you don't mind Joe answering, is that all right? Is that all
Could
right,
you-
Carolyn?
Yeah, that's fine, Joe. If you want to unmute yourself. Tom, would you restate the question, please?
Do you see the need to certify seed for recreational cannabis as we go forward?
I don't, for one simple reason. When you grow cannabis, our cannabis operation out west is a tier 2. So we're like the upper half of the micro tiers. It's grown more horticulturally. When you grow hemp, it's grown more agriculturally. So when you're buying a cannabis seed, you're generally buying 10 seeds, 20 seeds, 30 seeds, something like that. When you're buying hemp seeds, you're buying 1,000, 10,000 seeds, 50,000 seeds. So it's much more. And when you're growing THC, the other thing that I think is important is when we're talking about certification, our COAs, right? We generally provide a COA with all the seeds that we sell. We grow a test crop, we run it outside and we test that. A lot of farms will grow it indoors. They'll try and get that number as high as you can. And then what happens is when you sell it to a farmer that doesn't put the attention in that you did. So you say, all right, our crop, we're selling the Mansfield. We say it runs between 14 and 18% CBD. It's THC compliant. If you have a farmer that sticks it in the ground, doesn't pay any attention to it, doesn't fertilize it, it's wilted, all these things, it's not gonna produce that 14%. So my concern, at least with the guarantee, is that if you were to say it's going to be 14 to 18, you can't really guarantee that, because that's saying if you use best grow practices. If you don't use best grow practices, you won't necessarily reach those levels. As far as the THC rich crops go, when you a lot of times that's what the farmer, that's what the grower is looking for, is that unique, it's called a phenotype, right? So you grow 8 plants of all the same cultivar, and there's one that grows a little differently, right? Its flavor profile is a little unique. It's a little sweeter, or something that you recognize is different than the other ones. You can then isolate that plant, which is still within that cultivar, and start working on just isolating that phenotype. So that is something that the THC grower looks for. So you wouldn't want to necessarily make sure that wasn't in there, because the THC grower would a lot of times look for that different pheno.
Isn't the THC grower looking for feminization?
Nope.
No?
So I don't know many THC growers that buy feminized seed or even look for feminized seed. I know that you can buy them. That's usually for a more novice grower that is just trying to take a lot of the guesswork out of the game. So in that case, again, you're talking about, a breeder's pack is 10, 12 seeds, that's $100. So yeah, I could say that, but again, you don't want to take that bit of variety. You could definitely certify it as feminized. You don't want to spend $120 on a dozen seeds and get 6 males.
Okay, thanks, Joe. And COA means certificate of authenticity?
Of analysis, but yeah.
Of analysis.
Yep.
Okay, thanks. Vicky Strong's hand is up. Vicky?
Yeah, sorry. It took me a second to get that unmuted.
That's okay.
I'd like to thank everyone for their testimony. And Dan McClure is a constituent. And Dan, thank you for joining us. I didn't know about your kind of heartbreaking situation. So my question would be for Dan or even Edward, how much damage does this do to your income? And are you able to start over or try again? Are you going to this spring? How has it left you presently of what you're thinking to the future?
Dan, you want to go first and then Edward?
Well, I plan on growing a much smaller crop this year. I have my seed, which are all Oregon seed. And hopefully I can sell the biomass that I have from last year if I moving forward. But again, I did 8,000 last year. I'm doing 3,000 this year.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Dan. Edward, do you want to comment?
Sure. So the situation that we are in, Vicky, is, as I mentioned, we had secured contracts with two processors at the time. Our primary processor, who we have been trying to work with, has not been able to, we're still struggling with our relationship with them. In other words, we've grown, we have essentially 30,000 pounds of biomass that we are still up, even though it's contracted and was sold, we have yet to take in any type of money or revenue on yet. So without any money coming in from that, on top of the loss of revenue, so let's say $1 million, we're in a holding pattern. It's unfortunate, but there's a saturation within the oil markets, but at the same time, people aren't holding up their ends of the bargain, even if you have contracts in place. So it's really different. It's a very, it's been a fairly discouraging 18 months. The farm itself was a thing of beauty outside of the north side, and it was a heck of a, I enjoyed the business, but the business has got some maturity to go through, and so maybe this is the shakeout year. We will plant. Unlike, I do have an interest in some in tissue culture. So we've spent a lot of time talking about seeds. So I've got plants in tissue culture, which can offer some type of genetic superiority or a little bit more uniformity. So we'll plant on some level, but we certainly won't plant on the level that we did last year. Hopefully we'll be able to, we're still looking to pull in revenue, and that's with a contract that had us being paid, contracts in place that had us being paid last November. So it's really a difficult, it's tough.
Thanks, Edward. Joe, I see you unmuted yourself. Did you want to comment?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Nope. I'm good.
Okay, no worries. All right. So this has been really helpful. Dan, did you want to say something else?
Yeah, I was just curious if the Ag Department has any read as to how many farmers that grew hemp got paid or have received anything. I haven't heard of anybody that I've talked to that has received any money. And a lot of them that have sold their crops, but have yet to been paid.
So we haven't been collecting that information, and everything I have is anecdotal, but the people that are being paid aren't telling people they are. There's certainly more than half of our growers who did have contracts are doing okay. We can connect offline, and also it looked like Joe had something to
Yeah,
add.
Joe has his hand up.
I was just going to kind of mimic what you say, and I do a lot of consulting all around the east, up and down the East Coast with hemp farmers, and it's pretty much the same. There was a glut this year, and a lot of farmers are having a lot of trouble with processors backing out, not doing what they say they're going to do, people not buying what they say they're going to do, taking delivery of the hemp and then not paying, and then you're not able to get a hold of them. All those stories, again, it's all anecdotal, but it's not just happening in Vermont. It's happening in Connecticut and Massachusetts and Pennsylvania. It's going to be happening in New Jersey and Maryland and, all the states that are coming online this year. It's, to my mind, it's an area where we could, with something like this, it's something that we could, I would say, hope to lead in, like I don't know how, but there has to be some way to, not necessarily guarantee, but there has to be some way to make it a little better than it is right now, or make it much better than it is right now, because right now it's the Wild West out there. The West Coast has a much more mature market all the way around. I think a lot of what we're running into, at least in the hemp industry, is there's hiccups, there's bottlenecks in processing. And for a while, the processors were naming the price, and the farmers weren't naming the price, because every farmer and their uncle had hemp to grow. What I saw this year was a lot of farmers growing it, but I don't think overall the amount of sellable hemp probably stayed about the same. There was an enormous amount of really bad hemp grown this year. But again, I would say exactly what Carrie said. The farmers, the ones that put all the money out to get everything going. Again, you're not going to have, we've been in business 4 years on the hemp seed business. We've been in business 3 times as long as most companies in this segment on the East Coast. It's just, so you're going to have trouble finding a company that's been around for a while that has season after season of information to provide. And for the foreseeable future, at least, going forward, I think that it's going to stay the same. I know that we don't sell any biomass, but as a seed company, we certainly work with a lot of people that are buying and selling. We are starting to see an uptick in people and the interest. So we'll see. Generally, it's a sad situation out there.
Thanks, Joe. Edward has his hand up.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Carrie, this is a question more towards you. One of the things that I noticed, so I live up in Mad River Valley, so I was driving back and forth from Rutland, and whether it was down 7 or down 100, and some of the larger farms off of 7 were doing baling. Okay, so they were either picking flower in the fields, or stripping in the fields, leaving stalks, and then wet baling, or they were using corn. I'm not a farmer per se. I'm just they were using same apparatus that's used for taking down corn silage, and then baling that as well, and that became the go-to. It doesn't make any sense at all to be able to take a wet product and actually bale it and then put it into, and store it for a period of time. I guess if you baled it and then brought it to a dryer, and then the dryer was able to mechanically dry it and then process it down the road. But this is that huge void of a lack of information that's out there that I think that you guys could really, either with Professor Darby or somebody, do some type of study on, because I know now that even with 30,000 plants, we were pushing the limits on what we could do on our farm for hand. But we actually hand planted our plants too, because our transporter came in late, but our transplanter came in late. But we took down our plants by hand, hang dried them, and hang bucked them. So in other words, that's stripping the flower off of the flower and leaf off of the stalks, for those of you that don't know, and then drying after the drying apparatus. But to scale this business up, or to be a viable farm doing this as prices go down, there's got to be a way to do it in a manner that you can do it on a mass scale. In other words, take the stuff down and dry it on a level. And so I don't know if you guys are starting to do any studies, or anyone's, I know there are some companies out there that have done this. I don't know what their success rate is on, because no one's talking about it. But I know an awful lot of farms that had their product wet baled, and I couldn't tell you whether it worked or didn't work, because no one's really talking about it.
So,
yep.
Carrie, before you respond, I just want to say that it's pouring rain here, and I'm being told that my internet connection is unstable, so I may lose you again. But Carrie, do you want to respond? And then there's one more thing I want to talk about before we end the meeting.
Sure. Yes, there was one company in particular. They were wet baling, and as soon as their dryers opened up, they would cut open those wet bales, dump out the black material, dry it, and then ship it off to be extracted. And they were losing between 0.5% and 1% CBD content, but it was a way to get the crop harvested very quickly, mechanically. it's one business model. It's the opposite of the sort of smokable flower market that we're seeing a lot of our hemp growers go to. But it is a way to produce biomass. And if you don't know the company, send me an email and I'll put you in touch with them. And they had a lot of contract grows that were successful. That was a way to get a lot of biomass off the field quickly before it snowed.
Okay, thanks, Carrie. So we are going to have to wrap this up. I'm going to ask my committee members if and Tom in particular, because you were the person who wanted more information, how, like, are we feeling more comfortable with this? Do you want more information? And while you're thinking about that, Vicky, your hand is up again. Did you lower it or not?
I think I forgot to lower it. Sorry, Carolyn.
Okay, no worries. Carrie,
take
your
it off.
hand's up again. Is your hand up?
It is, and I did find some growers, Tom, down in Chester who've had similar experiences that you can reach out to directly or have testify in front of the committee. I just wanted to say that this isn't something that the agency sort of dreamt up. This was in response to some of the issues and problems that we've seen, and it's basically we're trying to bring in some of the consumer protections that are available to other sectors of the ag industry. And if you feel like it's something that you don't want us to do, I understand.
Okay, Tom's hand is up. Tom?
Thanks, Carrie.
Rodney?
Thanks, Carrie. I'm feeling much more comfortable after hearing testimony today.
Thanks, Tom. Rodney, your hand's up. Do you want to unmute?
Yes. Yeah. Coming back to what was Carrie had said yesterday, even if we approve this bill, get it approved, they might not be able to stand up that program this year. Is that still the feeling?
The label guarantees and seed feminization guarantees, yes, we will. But to establish we heard from Joe as well, it takes minimum of 18 months and probably longer to create a seed certification program and end up with certified seeds, because we are using other national certifying entities. And we would be partnering with the university to do some of that work. So Heather would be involved as well. And I don't know how much bandwidth they're going to have based on all the economic recovery work that's going to have to take place when we're on the other side of this.
Okay, thanks, Carrie. But this, if we enacted this, Mike O'Grady, if we enacted this, this would apply to this year's seed sales?
I believe it goes into effect July 1, 2020. So most people would have already bought their seeds for the year.
Okay, but it might send a message to those who are selling seed this year that they ought to be careful.
Well, I think, yes, the industry will know that there will be standards beginning July 1, 2020.
Okay. Tom, your hand is up again, or did you just forget to lower it? And same with Rodney. Okay. So thank you, Edward, Daniel, and Joe, for joining us. I think we're going to step away from this conversation. There's one more thing I want to talk to the committee about, and we're 10 minutes over. I hope we don't turn into pumpkins or something, because we're 10 minutes over our appointed time online. But this is something You all are welcome to stay on if you want. Feel free to leave if you'd like. So something that we're aware of. Bye, Joe. Bye. Edward. No, Tom, you stay on. And so, so there are folks who are listening in on YouTube or even watching us who have been very concerned about the what we're calling the soil enhancement bill, but it has to do with poultry foraging on food residuals. And my understanding is that the Senate Agriculture Committee is writing a letter, and Mike O'Grady, you can correct me if I'm wrong. They are writing a letter to the Agency of Natural Resources asking them to push back the deadline on you making your intentions known regarding going forward. And so, Mike, do you want to say a word about that? And we're being asked if we want to sign on to this letter. So, Mike.
So the Senate Agriculture Committee is drafting a letter that will ask A&R to delay implementation or the requirements for certification by 1 year because of the uncertainty of whether or not you will be able to legislate on the issue this year, and definitely before May 1st. So that is the nature of the letter. I'm drafting it right now. The chair of Senate Ag authorized me to talk to you about it and said it would be great if your committee was also on the letter.
All right, so we've taken a bit of testimony about this, and I'm wondering if people are interested in being on. You can, if you are, you can give me a thumbs up. If you have a question, you can raise your hand. I'm seeing some thumbs up here. Rodney, Vicky, John, Sharon, that was John Bartholomew, John O'Brien, Tom Bach, Terry, everybody's thumbs up. So, and I'm thumbs up too. So Mike, if you want to include us on that letter, we'd appreciate having you add us. Good.
Will do.
All right. So committee, I think our time is almost up. I mean, it was up a few minutes ago, but what I'd like to do for next week, they're still working on scheduling time. I know that we're going to have